Hi, I'm Melissa Werkmeister. I work for the Western Colorado Area Office of the Bureau of Reclamation here in Grand Junction, Colorado. I'm the Lands and Recreation Group Chief, Supervisor over wildlife areas, recreation, and realty. And we're looking at an area that burned in 2018, Memorial Day weekend, so we're thinking the end of May. And it was caused by a vehicle over in the interstate. It was pulling a trailer and the tire caught on fire. And at the time, the winds were extremely strong through this area. It's created a challenge for us being able to come out here and spray at times because it may be pretty calm conditions in town, but if anything's over 10 miles an hour winds, we don't spray. After that happened, that fire, it actually spread through reclamation property. Also, Halliburton Company has property in here, as well as the state park, James M. Robb, Colorado State Park, Island Acres. This area isn't an area that's open to the public, but we manage it for vegetation, for wildlife out here. That fire burned up a bunch of riparian areas, which included cottonwood galleries. At the time, there was a nest that had bald eagles and eaglets in it that probably didn't survive that fire. I'd say the trees in here, they're not super old, mature cottonwood trees, but they were mid-aged, provided a nice cottonwood area for wildlife to nest and use for habitat in here. And it also burned up, we have some sumac in here, a little bit of Russian olive, some tamarisk, which we weren't too concerned about it burning up, more concerned about it coming back, and rabbit brush and some of the native grasses like saltgrass and saccatone. And then we do have understory noxious weeds such as Russian knapweed, white top, there's some various thistles, and a little bit of perennial pepperweed. So we were concerned about those getting a hold in here and taking off and spreading and increasing and even crowding out the native species that we do have, the desirable species. So Cameo Long with Colorado State Forest Service, she put together maps of this area as well as a previous fire that we'd had over on Horse Thief Canyon State Wildlife Area. And she contacted everybody that had been involved, from Colorado State Parks, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife at Horse Thief, BOR and Halliburton, and brought us all together to talk about what was the next step. What were we going to do to rehab this area? And so one of the first things we did is we walked around the areas and checked out what had burned, what was still there, and put together ideas of what we needed to do to rehab this area. We knew we had to keep the Russian knapweed and the tamarisk from coming back, so we would have to do control on those, as well as the Russian knapweed and the white top. And then we evaluated what seasons we'd need to treat. I think we put together just a real rough weed inventory of how many acres we thought we needed to control the weeds. What our plan was for controlling the weeds, integrated pest management. There were some options, but our main option was to use herbicide to control the weeds here. We felt that would be the quickest and most beneficial and probably the safest on the environment for what we were doing. And then after we walked the property, we put together rough plans with, it was Tamarisk Coalition then, now it's River's Edge West, with Shannon Hatch, and estimates on what we thought it would take to control the weeds, as well as what it would take to rehab the area by replanting it later. And then beyond that, we have future plans to maybe put in some piezometers to see where the water table is now, where it would benefit to actually re-establish trees in the area for the cottonwoods that we've lost, and maybe some other species too, to increase the diversity and potential for survival out here. So one of the first things after that we did receive a grant through River's Edge West, or Tamarisk Coalition, through the Colorado Water Conservation Board. and for all of these properties. And we talked about with River's Edge West coming up with a strike team, some seasonals through Western Colorado Conservation Corps that were able to also control these areas, Kyle and Lewis. And they were able to come out in the fall and winter and help with the tamarisk, cutting some of the tamarisk and spraying some of the tamarisk to help us with the control. And then we knew we had to get a hold of the Russian knapweed. And so late in the year, we had already tried going out to this area and using our side-by-side to drive around, and we found that there were a lot of pokey sticks left from the tamarisk that had burned, and a lot of it's hard to see. It's under the taller Russian knapweed that came back, and so we got a lot of flat tires. So we decided that we would need maybe a track vehicle to use out here, and we rented a track vehicle, and we planned on spraying Milestone at 5 to 7 ounces per acre in the fall, and trying to use the track vehicle with a tank to spray that. And one of our challenges was it was late in the year, which was still okay for spraying Russian knapweed, but we had our tank freeze. And so Cory from our staff, Cory Lidberg, and Teresa Neese from Mesa County Weed and Pest, they came out and they did do some backpack work out here on Russian knapweed and kind of did a little bit of control on the weeds, but it was getting late in the year, and without having equipment that we could use and with the freeze and all, we decided we'd come back in the spring and control the white top. And in the spring, we came out and we had Halliburton was very helpful. They helped us get access to this property. Brian Paget was working for them then, and at that time, we could come out. They were willing to let us use water, which was a challenge because we have to go a long ways to get water for our tanks to spray. And so we tried spraying in the spring with their Toolcat that they loaned us, which was kind of a heavy-duty side-by-side kind of vehicle with a tank in the back, and that ended up getting flat tires. They thought the tires were pretty tough on it, but by the time they got the tires fixed, we were able to spray out several backpack loads of the, we were using Telar at 1 ounce per acre on the white top or hoary cress. The reason we selected that herbicide is because it does not impact shrubs and trees, and we did have some regrowth, plants coming back, the sumacs and some cottonwoods at the bases, and we didn't want to impact those at that time. We were hopeful that we would get more regrowth and more success. So that was our noxious weed control in spring 2019. We came out again. Actually, we wanted to come out again. No, we did, sorry. Fall 2019, we came out, and Cory Lidberg and Griff Shireman from our staff came out, and we used the Toolcat last fall to spray the Russian knapweed. Halliburton would provide us a driver even for that in places, and they were able to really knock back the Russian knapweed again by using Milestone at 5 to 7 ounces in the fall. And then we wanted to come out again in the spring and spray white top again, and what happened is in that time period, Halliburton had sold the property, or was in the process of selling the property, and we couldn't get a hold of the new owners to get access, and we don't have access through a road. It's only through their property. It's a little challenging because there's railroad tracks that we are limited in where we can cross to one location that's about quarter mile, half mile from the site where we need to get to. And there's also water between the railroad tracks and our property where sometimes we can get through and cross, on our own, just walking in with backpacks. So we had the challenge of access, and then late last summer of 2020, we were able to get access to the property again, and reach out to the new owners, and I think it's V&S, and they were very supportive of allowing us to come in and do what we needed to do, just keep in communication and let them know ahead when we were coming out. And so we came out this fall. Cory Lidberg and Kyle Alstatt from Bureau of Reclamation, and I came out for part of a day, and we sprayed the Russian knapweed again with milestone, and we could already see a big difference in what the property was looking like. Unfortunately, some of the earlier cottonwood sprouts at the bases of the cottonwoods, we didn't notice as many, so those must have died or dried up. It's been a couple years of drought here, and that's really impacted the survival of the native species, their ability to come back. And we did notice that there was a good kill on the Russian knapweed from the year before. And it's hard to tell with Russian knapweed. From fall to spring, you may be able to see the dieback, but you can't see it right after you spray it, because we usually spray it late in the fall. So you have to wait till the next year to see if it was successful. The same thing on white top. You can see it takes a long time even to see it dying. So it just the plant kind of fades to a tan color, and it's hard to tell, well, is this naturally the plant's getting older and dying and the chemical didn't hurt it, or did we kill it and the chemical, the telar, just takes a long time. And it does take a long time to see evidence of mortality from telar. And for us, it would be a whole season before we see whether it was successful or not, a whole year. So it would take us, from April or May when we spray till the next April or May to see what the kill was on the white top. So we got out again and sprayed Russian knapweed this fall, and then our plans are in the spring to come out and treat the white top one more time. We're looking at treating Russian knapweed one more time. We need to watch for Russian knapweed can produce allelopathic chemicals in the soil that prevent other plants from growing. So we're looking at our labels for milestone and telar to be sure that we're able to plant. And the best time of the year to plant out here is in the fall, late fall, for when we get our moisture. We don't want to plant, if we can help it, in the spring, and then it gets through the drier periods, the seed would just come up, sprout, and burn up if we don't get any moisture. So we're reevaluating what we want to do, and we would plant a native grass mix out here based on the soil conservation soil surveys, what's recommended on the soils that we have here. And we're going to broadcast it because we're not able to pull implements behind our tractor through this area, again, because of the Russian knapweed sticks. It would just tear up our equipment that we use. And because we're going to have to broadcast the seed, it means that we'll have to apply it at much higher rates, about double the normal rate that we would apply it for higher success for the seed to survive. And the reason we're going with the grass mix is because we know that we're going to need to follow up on the broadleaf noxious weed control on the Russian knapweed, some thistles, perennial pepperweed, and white top. So we don't want to spray out what we're seeding for the broadleaf native species. And then in the future, we talked about putting in piezometers to measure the water depth. And once we get a handle on that, we're hoping we can plant some cottonwoods and other species. One thing that Cory and Kyle came up with, we could use our tractor out here because they found out that they could get foam-filled tires so the tires wouldn't pop. And after using it a couple weeks ago, the tractor tires still look really good. So we're hoping to go with that. And one thing you'll see here where Cory sprayed earlier behind me is the blue dye that we use. When we use an herbicide, we use a surfactant that helps break down the hair and the wax on the leaves so that the herbicide can penetrate the plant and get into the plant and be sucked down into the roots and kill the plants. And the blue dye helps us see where we've already sprayed, because we don't want to spray the same area over and over again. It's too much herbicide at the rates we'd use. It also, we would be wasting herbicide. It's not very efficient and not very environmentally sensitive either. And the dye only lasts maybe a week, and then it just fades away. Stays longer on your hands, but it does wash out real quick on your clothes. Let's see. And then we're not going to mow the weeds back in here. We have no plan to. These are perennial noxious weeds with deep rooting system that spread from seeds as well as from roots. And we don't want to mow it because that really wouldn't do us any good. It's just gonna clear off the area for new plants to come in. Plus, pulling a mower with all those tamarisk sticks that we can't see under the knapweed, and some places we can, could really tear up our mower. Challenge that we have is spraying by shrubs with the milestone, because milestone can kill shrubs and trees. So we're careful in the areas we spray around the shrubs, but in some areas you can't avoid it. And we know we're going to go from a high area of high density of knapweed to an area that is like needle in a haystack, trying to find the plants later. Another thing that we've done out here is we've started weed mapping to know what we have and how well our herbicides and controls are working by going back to the same maps and seeing what they show us for how our herbicide's working and what kind of kill we're getting on the noxious weeds. And we are out here monitoring, but we're not out here very often. We don't want to overdo our welcome with accessing the area. And also, we're not going to see if there's a kill until the next season or the next year anyway.
Hi, my name is Cory Lidberg. I'm with the Bureau of Reclamation here in Grand Junction, Colorado. I'm on-the-ground manager for a couple of wildlife areas, including this 40 acres of burn area. Primary contact for spraying and keeping the weeds back on the property. So we have obviously a lot of dead standing cottonwoods that were burned. We're getting some regrowth from the resprouts, but we don't have a public safety concern here, so we decided to leave the majority of the cottonwoods standing and just let them fall on their own. Because even though they are dead, they are still good habitat for eagles and stuff. We have seen a fair amount of wildlife moving back into the area, like deer, and we found some bear scat. And the eagles that were nesting here during the fire, they did come back the following year until their nest got blown out of a tree. So there is the habitat potential even with the burnt trees. Since we don't have a water source down here, this is all natural floodplains for the river. We don't have the ability to introduce irrigation, so long-term plans is we would like to replant some cottonwoods and stuff, but we don't know where the water table is at. Once we get some piezometers in and try to figure that out, we can look at planting some of those or going with some upland species like buffalo berry or sumac more, just to try to get the vegetation back and prevent more of the tamarisk and Russian olives from coming back.
One of the things I wanted to bring up too is that we all have limited time that we have to work on these kind of projects. We have lots of other duties that we do, and so we probably should have had a more complete plan for this property, what we have here, what we were going to do to control it, troubleshooting, all kinds of different information. And part of the problem is with your time, how much are you going to do the plan versus how much you can do in the field? And we've chosen more to spend more of our time on the ground in the field with the time that we have, rather than to do a more in-depth plan. A plan would benefit us, but it's just not something we have a lot of time to work on. Also, our grant funding, we're really grateful to Colorado Water Conservation Board and Rivers Edge West Tamarisk Coalition for helping us acquire the funding that we need to control the noxious weeds and do the rehab on this properties, because we would not be able to do it on our own. But with the grant and our lessons learned and access to the property, we're not going to be able to seed it before the end of the grant. We're hoping to acquire seed this fall and hold that seed until maybe next fall to plant. The best time of year we found in this area is in the late fall, late winter time, before, in case you get a warm period during the winter, so that seed doesn't sprout and die back again. And that doesn't always coincide with grants and when the funding comes. One of the reasons we're looking at purchasing the seed now is because we had about 139,000 acre fire in this area this summer, just over the mountain from us here, over the Book Cliffs. And they're looking at needing to reseed 20,000 acres. And that seed has to come from somewhere, and we're all competing for it. So we're hoping to get the seed that we need now so that we'll have it when we need it. Another problem is storage of the seed, having the facilities to keep the seed in. There is a place down in Delta that does house the seed, and that's something we'll have to look into. Keeping it on our property, there's potential, but our areas, I mean, you can have mice and different issues get into seed too, keeping it, from freezing, whatever we have to do. And then technology out here, we've used the iPads and to do some of the weed inventory. We would have liked to do more. We do have a cell tower in this canyon. Otherwise, it's difficult to use the iPads and have connectivity to what we need to get the inventory done with the technology we have.